some big fish over here. This is super cool. So we're walking up on Butte Creek right now, and you can see I'm going to show you guys in a second, but there's some reds over here. There's like two, I think, two big females on a red. And then we just saw another fish come up the creek. And the size of these fish in these small creeks, and these are ocean fish. I mean, we're beneath Canyon Live Oak here. We're hundreds of miles from the Pacific Ocean. This is cool. Yeah, look at them over here. There's a fin out of the water over here. That is awesome. Just as promised, we're back on Butte Creek at Allen Harthorn's house. We met Allen last episode. We were here last summer when the fish were all holding over, and we swam with the fish. I was flailing around. I'm not a good swimmer. But we're back now to see those same fish spawn. When do you see them start to, the holding pool start to break up, and then they start to build the reds and spawn?
It's usually
how long is that?
About the middle of September, and myself and some other fish lovers around here all feel like it's water temperature more than anything. Of course, it happens pretty close to the same time every year, but generally when the average water temperature hits about 60 degrees, then they're going to start spawning.
On Butte Creek in the fall, we really got the chance to see the absolute circus the Spring Run Chinook Salmon spawn is. Here are some more reds. We talked about reds in our first episode. Got a female hen coming in view. This male is going to come in, bump the camera. The whole time we were there, the males were actively competing, jockeying for position to spawn the reds. You can see a little bit of that right here. During the spawn, the males will develop these real kind of oversized jaws, all toothy. You can see it right here. Scares himself. The females are also jockeying for position. Two females with some conflict here over red space. Kyle loving it.
Fish were just battling.
You know, the real beauty of this is that this is as close to a complete ecosystem as you can get in the Sacramento Valley. These are all wild fish. There's no hatchery influence whatsoever. Their population is large enough to where they have a dramatic effect on everything else in the ecosystem. The nutrients that they bring back every year from the ocean are fertilizing all of the riparian forest around here. All of the animals, all of the insects are picking up some of this carbon and nitrogen from the ocean as a result of the salmon coming back.
To get a sense of this, we put up our wildlife cameras. And what did we get? Great blue heron, common merganser just downstream of those reds where the salmon are spawning. A couple of black-tailed deer drinking. See a light color in front of them on the rocks? That's a red. Turkey vulture waiting to scavenge some carcasses after the salmon die. This black bear just missed a salmon. The deer are literally crossing right over the reds. Like right over them. Look at this. Salmon startles a deer. Happens again right here. It really just shows how shallow it is where the reds are being built. These two salmon are fleeing from something. They bump the camera. And again, what is it? It's deer. Deer walks into frame.
So these salmon, when they come up from the ocean, they're 10 to 20 pound like vitamin capsules. They're packed full of protein and nitrogen and phosphorus. It's fertilizers. There's been studies done in Alaska and some of these, the Pacific Northwest, where the nitrogen and the phosphorus from the salmon literally fertilizes the streamside vegetation. They found fixed nitrogen that can only come from a salmon in the pine needles of the top of the highest Sitka spruce. That nitrogen and phosphorus and that protein is delivered to this upper watershed at the ideal time in the fall, right before the long, dark, cold, winter where you need a lot of energy. So for bald eagles, bear, even the smaller animals out here, those bodies of the salmon, and eating and consuming those bodies might be the difference for them between life or death.
It's a well-functioning ecosystem that has that nutrient driver that very few other places do. So we get to see a diversity of wildlife up here that is really rare in California at all anymore.
It's just before dark, and what we're hoping for is maybe a black bear wanders out of the bushes. 3 creeks, Butte Creek, the one we're on, Deer Creek and Mill Creek, those might be the only drainages, the only watersheds left where you have Spring Run Chinook, which can migrate and spawn far enough up the watershed, no dams on those creeks, overlapping with black bear habitat. The most significant and cool part of being here on Butte Creek is almost every bend you look at, and from this view shed we've had, we can see a couple bends and a couple riffles along the creek. Every single riffle has multiple reds. There's males everywhere. They're competing with each other. Everywhere you look, there's salmon splashing around. They're spawning. All kinds of bird life. We've seen, bald eagles and raptors and smaller birds. There's bear scat everywhere. This little sliver here of Butte Creek, this kind of is a throwback to the bounty that not just California had, but a lot of places across this country. Passenger pigeons, bison on the plains and the prairies. These sort of large migrations and large collections of animals, that bounty of that North American wildlife. A little throwback is on display here in Butte Creek, and it kind of gives a feeling of nostalgia and really one of hope and optimism. But as we'll learn, things aren't always easy. When you have one type of animal in one location, you're not really hedging your bet at all. And here on Butte Creek, the campfire just went by not too long ago. And if this Butte Creek population does collapse, it's going to be bad for Spring Run Chinook salmon. In the future, if we lost the Butte Creek independent population of Spring Run Chinook, what does that mean?
That would essentially reduce the entire Central Valley Spring Run population, or the Sacramento Valley Spring Run population, down to under 1,000 fish. Deer and Mill Creek, you usually get about 500, sometimes up to 1,000. Deer Creek and Mill Creek have very independent genetics, so it probably wouldn't be affected that much, but all of a sudden you're down to less than 1,000 fish altogether in the Sacramento Valley. So it would be a big hit. This is the stronghold for spring run salmon in the state of California, and probably one of the best strongholds on the West Coast. This actually often, in most years, has more spring run salmon than the Rogue River. So those are things that most people don't understand, but if they lost the Rogue River population, that would be unbelievable. So we don't get to fish for these fish, so we can only just look at them and appreciate them. But it's really something worth saving for a lot of reasons. The health of the watershed, really.
A real quick background on Allen. So Allen is the director of Friends of Butte Creek. It's a nonprofit that I believe he helped form himself. On Butte Creek, there's a network of private property landowners that are basically stewarding this spawning and holding habitat. Unlike other places that are, long stretches of public land, this is a patchwork of private property. Also, Allen owns this property. He's a very humble guy, so we're gonna do a little bragging for him. He's kind of devoted a portion of his life. He's also a professor and a farmer and all these cool things to these Spring Run Chinook salmon. He does his best to look out for this holding pool. He does his best to educate people about Spring Run Chinook salmon, and he super graciously invited us out to his property like 3 times now to see the holding last summer and now to see the spawn. And we were blown away with the job he's done, with the job that Friends of Butte Creek has done, and like we mentioned before, this is the last stronghold of Spring Run Chinook salmon, wild Spring Run Chinook salmon, no hatchery influence in California.
Where the Wild Roam is hosted by Joe Flannery.
My grandfather was a park ranger. My parents were both park rangers. I was the 3rd generation. I've been lucky enough to spend my entire life outdoors, learning and working in conservation. And I'm excited to share that knowledge with you.
With Kyle Lancaster.
Lately, we've been getting into conservation filmmaking. We believe that a conservation ethic begins with education and understanding. Never stop learning about the natural world.
And hey, if you like the show, please support, share, subscribe, follow, like, and all that stuff. Let's start a movement that prioritizes wildlife, wild places, and conservation within our daily lives.